Okay. All right, so 2 o'clock on January 10th, 2023. This is a work session with the Board of County Commissioners to review more potential options for OHV use in the county and our current ordinance. I'm sorry. We have Bryce, who is now our Deputy Director of Community Planning and Development, and Schneider, who is the Director of Community Planning and Development. And just as a point of order, this work session will be with the board, staff, and our legal team. If we determine at the end of the work session that it's appropriate for public comment, we will take public comment at that time. But we do ask that we refrain from public comment while the board is interacting with staff and legal. So that'll give us the best opportunity to work through these options together. So with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Anne to start us off.
Thank you. Thank you. So staff has put together just a presentation to just kind of outline all what we're asking today of the board is some guidance for staff. We've brought forth 2 strategic proposals and methods to address current use on County Road for both OHV use, private and public and commercial. And so we have 2 different proposals. We'd like to bring them both forward along with the different tools that we believe are needed to effectively manage use on county roads. So there's a lot of overlaps in both of these proposals. We're calling them option 1A and B. Both include moratoriums, an ordinance revision, the creation of a special use permit, and then we have two different approaches. One we're calling zoning compliance pathway and the zoning enforcement pathway. So there are a lot of overlaps, obviously, between the two options. So we're just going to start with some key points of ordinance revision. And the first is that the ordinance 1202 did not contemplate any kind of commercial operations. And so there would be the introduction of commercial operations standards, which include potentially GPS tracking, road maintenance participation and equitable participation within road maintenance, Leadville or Lake County base of operations requirement, Lake County CUP or Leadville business license in good standing, that the vehicles could not exceed 40 inches in width, and that a special use permit specific to roadway use. Those would be all of the new establishing and recognizing commercial use different from public use, something that's never been done in the resolution before. And then public use modification. Add some clarity to this point A to point B. Restrict any type of non-recreational OHV use, such as trips to the grocery store, where a primary means of transportation is required. So let's talk, the new language will talk about using the most reasonably direct pathway from your starting point to a viable recreational use, but not using it where a primary means of transportation is the appropriate method of transportation. And then through and that's about the only change that we're proposing at this point in the ordinance. Keep in mind that staff believes that there will be an ordinance revision now, and then at the outcome of the moratorium, there'll be a second revision of the ordinance based on the future work, where we'll really focus on public safety and mitigating any adverse impacts. And I'll get a little more into that in the moratorium work when we get to that slide.
And when you say now and not resulting from, just to be clear, this meeting is not to make decisions, so in the more near future.
Correct.
And through the proper process.
Exactly. So now meaning that, you know, what, excuse me, sorry.
Nope, somebody just joined our Zoom.
Okay,
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, Ann.
Nope, that's okay. Go ahead and minimize.
Should I maybe able to disable the?
Recording in progress.
Disabled, right, there we go. Okay,
Perfect. So, right, just to answer your question from current, to answer your question and to add clarity, that's right. Right now, all that we are looking at is asking the board for guidance in these two strategic pathways. But when we get this work done in the first phase, we'll be looking at a modification of the ordinance. When we get through a potential moratorium and future work, we believe that the outcome of that will result in the last ordinance revision, just to add some clarity. So again, this needs to be a layered approach with several different tools. So first, talking about roadway use, the creation of a special use permit, something that the county does not currently have, but this work would bring forth. And that is the special use permit will be required for any commercial use of county roads. They'll work in conjunction with a conditional use permit or the Leadville business license. So if the base of operations is in the county, a conditional use permit is required. And if the base of operations is in the city of Leadville, then a business license is needed. This permit will come on board because those permits only looked at zone parcels. the special use permit will come in and work in conjunction with those, because it'll be the tool that speaks specifically to the roadway use. The resource is needed to ensure consistency between licensing and permitting. So the Leadville business licensing may not have the same requirements of a conditional use permit. So the roadway use special use permit adds the ability to look at the licensing and permitting in a more consistent manner. Renewed annually is what's being proposed, but with the possibility of a 3-year merit-based permit potential, similar to the Forest Service. When an operation comes in and it's been successful, there is the ability to do those longer term permits. And then the land use tool, of course, when the base of operations is in the county, is the conditional use permit. And what this allows is the site and proposal specific review. So you'll be able to look at each commercial operation very specific to whatever their plan is. And it's really needed to be able to dial down into the details. It provides clarity for the applicant. There's more predictability, more understanding of what the process is. And this is also a codified and enforceable tool, as will be the special use permit once it is put into place. And so we're two pathways, compliance or enforcement. Compliance pathway would be to allow existing commercial use on county roads through the IM zone district. This would define existing commercial use as operations that have been operating for a minimum of 1 year as of the date of the ordinance on roadways within the IM zone district. They must obtain or hold either a Lake County CUP or Leadville business license, or be in the process of. And just to update, we have been in contact with operators that are looking to seek a CUP that have base of operations in the county. And they will also have to obtain a special use permit for the roadway use. The enforcement pathway would be to prohibit existing commercial use on county roads through the IM zone district. And what would have to happen in order to move forward in that direction would be an ordinance prohibition. Tool, the purpose of it is an intentional review and consideration of the impact to county roads, address community safety, health, and welfare, align future planning goals to regulatory processes, and the effect of the moratorium would be to prohibit any new outfitter and guide conditional use permit applications that propose to utilize county roads. Special use permits will not be available to any new commercial operations during the moratorium period. The goals and outcomes that we would like to bring forth will be evaluating the commercial impact to county roads, working with different groups to provide youth education and programs. We heard through the listening session in the town hall that public and private use there is a concern about a need for maybe some programs and ways to support youth in Lake County in proper safety practices and making programs maybe available to youth in Lake County. And then reviewing the enforcement review and what is called out in the existing ordinance as far as enforcement. This will be direct work between CPD and law enforcement to find out what tools are effective, what kind of pain points they have about point A to point B. And just making sure moving forward that we have enlisted their help to make sure that the enforcement, if there are edits or changes that need to be made, that we're working together to bring those forward to the board. And then I think one of the key outcomes and goals that we're excited about is the development of county roadway use guide. Something similar to the land use guide, right? Something that is changeable and can be changed as there are new developments on roadways. If Public Works has projects that they're working on, and so this would be something right now, the Land Development Code already categorizes roads. We have primitive roads, we have local roads, we have collector roads, and so that's kind of where we're gonna start, looking at what kind of category all the roadways are, and then looking at what's appropriate in different areas. Are there areas that certain things should be discouraged due to impacts, due to conditions of those roads. Are they in areas that we need to protect and preserve? So the development of that will be that one more tool that's very predictable, that's very transparent, so that users are aware of what those guidelines are. So those would be the outcomes of that we would hope for the moratorium work. I would just want to share with board at this point and with Chris that we have done stakeholder interviews. We really put on our listening tools when we had the town hall meeting, and I think that the work that we are bringing forth really is included within in what staff's bringing to you and the different ideas that we have. We have furnished draft copies, and I apologize for the work in progress on the ordinance, but that was kind of converting it from the PDF, the old PDF, into a Word document. And I know I gave Chris some challenges on that, so thanks, Chris, for hanging in there. And the special use permit. So the special use permit, it allows for applications to come in, for us to vet it through the different agencies, public works, law enforcement, emergency management, just to have that situational awareness before roadway use permits would be approved, so that in case there's other factors that need to go into reviewing those special use permits. So both of those drafts have been sent to you kind of as a work in progress for the next week. And on the 17th of January, we are proposing that we would have a moratorium draft, the ordinance after any input that you give us, the special use permit. So all of those drafts we would provide to Chris and have ready for your review and Chris's review, in the hopes of maybe bringing something forward to the board their first week in February for adoption. But wanting to hear today from you which pathway that you believe that we should go. We did speak to different user groups, and I think overall there is a big support for what we would call it as option A, which would be the allowing existing use, but allowing the moratorium to consider any future use moving forward, and what kind of impact that would have. So those are the takeaways that we have from the interviews that we did. We are getting into some kind of last minute input from stakeholders. And so we will absolutely make sure that that's included in the moratorium work, because it really is information that will serve that future work. So we'll make sure that that's reported out to you and is included when and if we enter into a moratorium. So happy to answer any questions that you have from this initial kind of look, but really what we're hoping is to gain which pathway you would like us to go down. And if there are any other questions, I would also mention that some of the things that we put into the ordinance, we also did mention an awareness about fragile and tundra areas, being conscientious in different areas and natural resources and preservation. So that language is included in the ordinance also. I think that was a really important piece to bring forth. And I think there's probably some other nuanced pieces in the draft ordinance. And I know Bryce brought one up. I didn't, I probably could email it up if you want to look at it on the screen. But we do have it in hard copy if you want to take a look at anything within the ordinance. But knowing we've got this week to, what we would propose is just allow you a week to look through that and see if you want us to tweak anything in there. I know Chris has already given us some red lines on it, so happy to provide anything that would be beneficial for you to provide us with a little more guidance. Okay. Go ahead.
Maybe it's a couple quick clarifying questions. So the purpose of the moratorium is just like a little breathing space, because I could see it being pretty complicated to be trying to figure out how to provide a solution for the current operators and, balance with the community to try to blend a new application in at the same time would just be like too much.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that what we want to do is the way that staff approached this was, how do we manage what's currently happening and make sure that we've got good tools in place to do that, and then take a time out and consider any new increase in use. So particularly from commercial. So the effect would be no new applications for conditional use permit or special use permits for roadways until this has been properly vetted.
And are you thinking from the staff side, like the length of that, so would that be for like this current winter season and the coming summer season, but potentially we could have a plan in place for next winter season?
Exactly. I think that we would propose a 6 to 8 month moratorium period.
Go ahead.
I don't know if anyone else had.
No, go ahead.
I can start. I mean, I guess I favor what I think you're calling the compliance pathway that tries to seek that. So tackling commercial first before talking about private use. I mean, I think I'd like to try to find the balance where, and see if there is a balance where for the commercial operations, you can run an attractive, viable business on the allowed routes without having too much conflict with either private users, or impact on the roadway or, other factors. So I mean, I think going straight to the enforcement pathway seems like a big departure from where we're at right now. So again, I'd like to see if we can find that balance in the county between different types of users and between private and commercial guiding. And then we can see, so I'll just, start with that.
No, I lean more towards the compliance pathway as well. And figuring out how to regulate now before it gets to a point where we don't have the opportunity to regulate, and then we are risking picking and choosing commercial operators if it gets to that point where there's oversaturation. So I think doing it now before we hit the saturation point is really good. So that's where I'm leaning, is with that compliance pathway as well. Go ahead.
I agree. I think that I would ask, I think it's also a little confusing to say compliance and enforcement, and anyway, but I think in reality, well, let me just say, I would request of staff to meet with the Forest Service, because I think we're gonna have, Public Works and I had a conversation with the Forest Service on a different topic, but to understand the compartments, and it was very helpful to really go through the mechanics of a formula that's looked at. I think that we need some level of a formula rather than simply discretion of staff and or encouragement from staff to decision makers. I think that's how, there is a level of discretion, and I understand that through the Forest Service continuing to combat ever increasing use of the forest, they are applying new methods in South Park. I think they even put out a prospectus, I was told, for kind of like our RFP for users, because there was just so many that were coming, and it was hard to create a fair process of is it first come, first serve? Is it tenured? How long you've been doing this?
Yeah.
With commercial users, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, because I appreciate the idea of coming at it with the idea of fairness, but I think in reality, if applying something formulaic and based on impact and science and cost and resources of the county, you know, we could talk about limiting days to 3 or something, but then what's our process? We've decided for opening it up to which outfitters exist. And I think we have to discuss that at a greater length, because I don't think that 3 days allowed in area for commercial use period is going to be like this. I mean, I don't think that looks like 1 day per commercial user,
Yeah,
right? Like I
Yeah, 'cause
don't.
then no one can run a business.
right.
Like,
So, I think those are conversations that definitely need to be had, and I do feel strongly that if, we can meet with Rebecca and, learn more about what they do, that would be very helpful. I also would be very interested in creating and sharing out some different scenarios that we might come up with stakeholders and outfitters, just so it's this ongoing, like, hey, here's the reality of what we might be looking at considering in 8 months, you know, as appropriate and developed to an extent through that moratorium process. And I think that would look like that SCP, that invitation to apply for permitting, the permitting requirements, and then like a clear list of considerations per season, because I think those are very different.
Yeah, I
and
think
will
it would
be
need
very
to be
different.
broken up by season for sure.
Mhm.
Or the Forest Service breaks it up by season as well.
Yeah, you have to, yes,
Because like the special use permit for Nordic Swing, like at the golf course is different, right?
right, than anything,
Mhm.
right, if something else was used in that
Right,
area, or, right,
Right.
yep,
okay.
different impact, maybe a different area altogether that we're talking about, so I think that would be helpful to, kind of clearly list. I mean, in general, I remain an advocate for the community in preserving a space that doesn't turn into what I think most of the community feels like Turquoise Lake is just like insane, and I don't know anybody who voluntarily goes out to recreate out there anymore because there's so much activity, so
Yeah,
I would participate in this process with that in mind of like, I'm not interested in creating a new area like that in the industrial mining district. The idea of like using the Silver Kings route was intriguing to me, and I think that'll be part of the conversation moving forward, but if that's already something that's like super utilized, what does it look like exacerbating traffic on that? And can Public Works estimate what kind of, different maintenance schedule we might see if we designate portions of that route? I think it would be wise to designate loops rather than out and backs, which it does include. And open to the conversation, but at this moment, feeling like I probably still wouldn't necessarily be in favor of that, but I think the conversation, the deliberation should be had for sure in the summertime. And again, like that winter and summer compared season use, I think the winter is just so different in that expectation of the atmosphere, the condition, the accessibility to the community of a healthy, outdoor space. I think it's something that really needs to be held as a very valuable asset. And I also, so one thing too, in the ordinance as it reads, the 40-inch, I don't know, I wonder if you could just kind of vet that a little more, because I feel like it should be 50-inch width. In like cursory search online of like, what's a typical width of a snowmobile, what's a typical width of an ATV, it seems to be 42 to 50 inches. And on the Stay the Trail website for stewardship and like etiquette, it does mention specifically, a lot of ATVs are 50 inches or less. Most side-by-sides or UTVs, however, are 50 inches in width and are limited to designated full-sized four-wheel drive routes only. It gives a little note of like, you buy an ATV that's under 50 inches and you put fat tires on it and it's over 50 inches, you're now out of compliance. So I just want to make sure that I feel like it should be 50 inches, not 40 inches.
Sure, no worries. We got that from a stakeholder meeting that we
Okay.
had. And
Okay.
so if I, because I know
Okay.
I'm the one that took that note, if it was meant to be 50, we will absolutely.
Okay. And I think the idea on that is that impact of those side-by-sides and those tracked vehicles is very different and very hard to maintain and keep up with, and that's what we have heard from the Snowmobile Club, and that's, I think this changes that request for permissions and the intent of investing tax dollars for community benefit up on the east side.
That's exactly right. That was the thought behind limiting that. So we'll just verify that should be 50 and not 40.
I guess just another, I again, to kind of come to a concise, decision point through conversations yet to happen. But I do still think it's pretty risky business allowing the definition of a point of recreation just to be a county road. I think we have areas that even trailer to are not groomed and very narrow and pretty dangerous, like thinking about out to Champion Mill and on County Road 11 in the winter time specifically, and
Or summertime.
yeah, I mean, in summertime, it's like, yeah, forget it, it's overused and insane, and to encourage more use in that area like that seems silly, but wintertime is, seems pretty tricky, so I just think, moving forward, and then the option B, because I think it sounds like there's some alignment, but what can you, can you just reiterate overview of option B, the enforcement of what exists?
Sure.
What your thought was?
If option B is the prohibition of any commercial use on county roads through the IM zone district. So that would be our pathway forward. We'd be leaving that within the ordinance revision and taking that out of an opportunity for commercial use on county roads.
It only in the IM district to kind of enforce what 2016 actions sort of were thought to have kind of. Yeah, I guess in reality I'm more in favor of that, but I'm in the minority there.
Well, sorry, like little tangent, I had a question, sort of like, why picking on the IM zone, just in conversations, just now you listed some other county roads that are also pretty overused, depending on the season. I don't know why, and presumably the enforcement pathway doesn't only need to be in the IM zone. We could
I would say that
we could start to enforce on other county roads. I mean, just hypothetically,
absolutely,
or
that could
legally,
be
we would
an
have that
outcome.
authority.
That could be an outcome of the moratorium work, and in creating what we really think would be a powerful tool would be the county road use guide.
Yeah,
That can be changeable, flexible, a living document, and that it could address the change in times. What we're trying to do is create an ordinance that will stand the test of time, have flexible tools in there, like the conditional use permit, like some of the, finding some formulas to calculate the volume of use that can be applied to the conditional use permit process.
yeah,
That can be applied to the special use permit process. So just recognizing that, we've got a lot of layering. So absolutely, an outcome of the moratorium may be that the road use guide directs future use. And so this is a pathway to address what's happening right now. And then the compliance pathway would be to address what's happening right now in an intentional manner, and then to move forward with any added use. And knowing that now we will have conditional use permits, special use permits, and the coordination. I know the city is here, and they have passed a moratorium on business licenses. And then we've stated in the ordinance draft and hope to continue to collaborate with the city because they've identified and been in on this work some need to revisit commercial use and private use. And we want to continue to collaborate with them to make sure that this is a tool for both jurisdictions and that it meets both of our needs. So I'm excited about the work that the city has done, and I'm looking to continue to collaborate with them.
I liked a lot of what you were saying, Sarah, and one thing, I like the idea of like us trying to get to, some formula or like really clear guidance to staff on what the compliance pathway, what trying to figure out, I guess, guidance for the special use permits, allowing specific routes. But I think in addition to some sort of like, it probably needs to be more than just like a formula for like overall use in a season in an area, because I feel like from a lot of the feedback we've gotten, there's some specific pain points on specific routes. So I feel like somehow we need to think through some guidance or criteria to staff about how to find some routes for the commercial special use permits on roadways that minimizes those pain points with other users, or minimizes damage to grooming, damage to our roadway that the county is responsible for, that kind of thing, or minimizes too much traffic at certain trailheads or whatever it is.
Well, and I think the formula from the Forest Service special use permit takes that kind of stuff into consideration too.
Okay.
So that will take like the bias, I guess, if you will, out of the permitting process and give us a tool that says, like, here is the impact on the roadway and the use between this user group and other user groups and what has the most impact.
I will say though, like, there is a level of discretion, and the formula should give some confidence in like a pathway there.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, I am pretty, again, like, for winter use in the IM, I'm pretty, like, no commercial use. Like, that is different for me, and it seems to be a clear community, like, outcry of, like, the clear impact up there, and or place to
With conflicting
preserve.
User groups in the winter and the IM.
Yeah, and a challenge, and, I mean, we certainly have some challenges in summer maintenance too. But again, like, happy to go through that. The Forest Service uses a certain level of discussion as well, and
Right.
But having that additional tool, I don't think it's just going to be a plug and play formula. But I think the exercise of going through it is helpful for any staff or decision maker. I also wonder, bringing up, like, I could go with the compliance pathway, but I'd be curious from Public Works, like, prohibition of commercial use moving into summer months on Mosquito Pass, like, that is an awful, like, that seems to be, like, without a doubt, staff from across the county is like, we can't, like, that is
That's
terrible
worse.
condition. Like, so I wonder if we can, do you have a comment?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Hello.
Have to bring that back a little bit to your special use permit and your conditional use permit. That will be referred out to Public Works before it's approved, so that we have that nexus, we have that reason why this wouldn't be allowable. So we can really drill down with those two tools. I think eventually having a road use guide that's very transparent and everyone agrees on, and you know, the public can see that, any potential commercial users can see that. But I think the tool right now that we could use will be your special use permit and your conditional use permit, which will be referred out. And you'll have all of that information to make those very informed decisions on a very specific. So any operator is going to have to come in and give their route, and it's subject to approval based on all the information that's brought forward.
And I was saying, I mean, in a way that's similar to like the questions we ask when someone's doing a special event permit, and we're asking like, oh, if your emergency egress route requires like high clearance, like, you know, vehicles, and you don't have, you don't have that.
Like if there's
You know,
an
that's
accident
not
on-
okay. You can't have that commercial event somewhere where we can't get, you know, search and rescue.
Mhm.
I think, are you asking about the gap between the special use permitting process and this spring season?
Yes,
particular?
yes, because I thought I understood, talking with you both individually, that this would be potentially, a special use permit would be put in place for the summer season. But Commissioner Fiedler asked if this would be in place for the next winter season, so what do we?
Well, I guess it would be
timeframe?
both, it would be both. We're proposing to have this up and running by February. So these tools will be available to immediately put in place because the need is now. It's not, you know, so eventually, I think our future planning tools will be that county road use guide. But right now, where we want to give you something, tools to be able to look at current use and not to delay that. So we want these tools available and ready for adoption by February with the special use permit and the city here, but we're working to make sure that those are being properly applied.
Okay, so you're kind of saying the idea of summer road conditions is maybe a moot point, because we would address that through this year's process of special use permitting for summer operations.
Which is ongoing as of right
Yes.
now. We're already addressing that with the with the pre-existing outfitter operations that don't have a CUP. We're in the process of getting them their CUPs. And so, I mean, the goal is to have them all addressed by this summer.
Okay,
Would that include those that have operations with Forest Service permitting?
Yes.
okay.
Yes, okay.
Because even those still touch a piece of
County.
land in the county.
Yeah.
Where a CUP would apply.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not one, I think there's only one outfitter I can think of immediately that holds a CUP for various reasons, but we've been in contact with anyone that, I think we have one group that we are still working on having more conversations with, but we're already in very deliberate conversations with outfitters that need to be obtaining a CUP for their base of operations in the county.
Okay.
Sarah, I need to put you on the spot, but like, I want to come back to the idea of no winter use in the IM, and I like, my brain is thinking, I mean, that is sort of like a feeling that there is no compliance pathway, there's no way to actually meet the terms of the special use permit for roadway use in winter. That kind of, so commercial guiding can't meet whatever the formulas and criteria are that we put on the special use permit in winter up in those areas. There's too many pain points, too much conflict, too much degradation of other users' experience, and yeah. Well, so that was question one, and then question two, I think maybe almost more for staff is like, but then what wouldn't we apply the same criteria to like Turquoise Lake County roads?
So that, I
Like,
think that's for
why?
me, there's like there's alternate areas. There's a huge variation in alternate areas between the winter and summer season. And I would prefer to look more closely at Turquoise Lake and figure out allowing commercial use and improving the current conditions out there and preserving that east side access out your door of the city residents. And like, I just think that it's,
Okay.
I don't necessarily want to exploit all the community gems.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that's
And that is a complete,
yeah,
of complete description, like, there is no formula to that, that is kind of
I think it's an interesting thing, is like, do you spread the use around like all the compartments on the east side, or do you try to, you know, shove certain uses over here and other uses, you know, over here? And yeah, I don't have the right answer, but like, it's not, yeah, the best approach isn't obviously just like spread it equally everywhere.
Right,
Well, and I would just remember, and maybe kind of bring back and highlight kind of at the start of some of these discussions, was the perception that zoning addressed where outfitting and guide was appropriate in the county. And that was considered appropriate in any areas outside of the industrial mining zone district. And I think that's really, Jeff, how we kind of landed on, you know, kind of zeroing in on, okay, well, the use associated with land parcels had always thought to be not appropriate in the IM when we introduced outfitting and guide to the code. And so I think that's how we landed kind of looking at this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and so now we're looking specific to the roadway use, knowing that that had been an issue when when we brought in the outfitting and guide.
Yeah.
So. I think
Yeah, I mean, it
that's
makes
kind of
sense
why
to
we
me
landed on that.
practically, sorry.
No, no.
No, go ahead.
You have the Forest Service and BLM permitting that, you know, it's having some level of control that we don't really have on the east side, or the IM zone. I mean, up higher, I guess, is BLM.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we don't have that sort of permitting or control on use being done by other entities. So, I mean, I just sort of, it's like triggering in my brain, or like a little flag that we just want to try to think about this kind of fairly across the county, on the entire county road network. Well, whether some word.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should have an answer to that question. Like, there should be a thoughtful reason for that distinction. But I mean, clearly, I mean, there are other county roads not on the east side where we have overuse and some conflicts, or damage to the roadway or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Like Half Moon, you know, and Half Moon's a mess because it's one of those trailheads in summer.
And also, like, I mean, I don't know that there could be a formulaic justification for all things. I think hearing and doing outreach to Clear Creek and Park and all those other counties that are like, we never had OHV allowance and we don't want it, and Clear Creek in particular, you know, think about like, they're the first gateway community from Denver. Talked to one of their county commissioners, like, oh my gosh, we talk to the Forest Service all the time because we want to allow X, Y, and Z to operate, and they want them to park here, and that's not, like, we just don't want to open the floodgates on that, and
Yeah.
I wish I had a more articulate way to just express, like, how strongly I think the community feels about the IM, but I don't know that there's a way that might satisfy you. I'll just be frank. I don't know that.
That works.
No, it's especially it's not like a quantitative formula, and I think also at some point, like, I don't know, they've given up on Turquoise Lake, but like you said, I agree, like everyone, I mean, in my own personal use, like I just don't go there anymore, unless I'm gonna go snowmobile.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Like,
right.
it's not very
Which in
fun, it's
itself
not very
is
fun to
dangerous.
winter recreate non-motorized there anymore.
Yeah.
So with this compliance pathway, would we start with the summer CUP and work into winter in the last 6 months of 23?
Yeah, I mean, the
Sorry.
CUP discussions are ongoing with
Okay,
snowmobile operators as they
Okay.
are today. You know,
Okay.
realistically, we're not gonna be able to get to it this winter, but I think we're trying to address it as soon as possible.
This, like, current, like, the season we're in now.
yes. But like
Just
before the
wanted to be
start of.
super clear.
Yeah, but before the start of like the season in November 23.
Yeah, that
Okay.
for sure.
Okay,
That's the
okay.
ultimate goal, is to have them all under compliance and fully through that process by next winter.
Okay, for winter.
For winter operators,
Summer's coming now.
summer's
Okay.
coming, and we're hoping to get as many as we can taken care of before then.
And then we have to, I think we should share out too, that our outreach so far has found operators willing to, sometimes there were pinpoints that they were unaware of. And, you know, they're already saying, well, how can we mitigate that? You know, we're looking, I really think some of it has been an educational piece too, as we're having some discussions and we're finding, we're largely finding that we haven't had any pushback to coming into compliance. So
Okay.
I would say that assuming good intentions, it would be very, very fair.
I was just, I mean, all of this is really primarily around that commercial use. Any other, and I'm very much in favor of biting out one, make it a plan. Would you anticipate us dealing with the public use? And that was another, through the ordinance, there's like private, commercial, public. And I wonder if we can agree on like saying the individual, local, not commercial user,
I have
maybe
that
the
noted
public
in my-
user.
in my notes
whatever.
on there too.
Vernacular that you want.
Maybe we
so.
can, yeah, instead of private, just replace all private, because I think the intention of that is a public user, so maybe let's just try to use like public and commercial
That's fine.
throughout, which
Whatever.
I don't think is like, there's like one instance in there.
Yeah, I think it's in section 2 or section 1 or 2 of the ordinance, that it refers to. So, yes, we can be consistent in how we refer to that.
And we need, I think, to be clear also whether whether a unguided rental is commercial or private.
It's commercial, but
commercial.
we can, and that'll also be dealt with in their CUP and and if they don't hold a CUP and they have a liquor business license, it'll be dealt with in their special use permit. Okay, but very good point.
And the way we deal with out-of-towners coming in is by saying that they require a Lake County CUP or business license in the
Yeah.
city, and their base of operations needs to be in the county somewhere.
I just think there's some thinking through to do there, like what if someone rents a Jeep out of BV and drives up here?
I think those are those one-offs, and I think we can't,
It's not a
we
way to
can't
do it, right?
really look, I would just caution us about trying to regulate over, you know, those just, all the what ifs and try to, you know,
Right.
good to consider, but I think that we'll render ourselves a little, I think if we get too complicated in our regulation, it'll be very hard to enforce, and it'll be hard for the public to understand a little bit. So somebody may rent a Jeep and another, you know, and drive it 30 miles.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll happen, but I think largely we want to look at the majority of our use and kind of stay in there, and I think we'll be more effective if we kind of stay in that pathway. It's just, that would be my recommendation.
And, I mean, I can live with that and see, becomes a big enough problem.
Right, like, you know, if we do see that is becoming a trend, then I would say let's revisit where we're at.
Other than minor wordsmithing things, the other big comment I have is maybe through some other community ordinances, they used specific language of model traffic code. And I know you have CRS in here, but I wonder if that makes it easier for law enforcement, and I'd ask if we just make sure
Check with them.
the sheriff's office and PD.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is, especially within the city, the model traffic code has been adopted with some exceptions that might not apply with the county, so there might be some discrepancies between those applications.
Okay, if it doesn't make it any easier for enforcement, then that's a moot point.
Well,
suppose, but
I
I'm
mean, we
just
could
curious.
address it as adopted by each jurisdiction.
Okay.
Okay. The only other thing of substance that I added in here was section 1, the designation of roads. Private use under A, or, sorry, section 8, where it says, all use of county roads by motorized OHVs must be limited to direct travel from point A to point B, which is a recreation destination. Purpose of travel shall not include access to the grocery store, post office, or OHV restricted areas or similar areas. I wonder if we can also add in there, maybe some type of reference to the state highway and Harrison.
And I was gonna say, that's one area that I have redlined in terms of that, because
Okay.
in order to say, you know, something effectively allowed purpose of travel should not include access for shopping at retail, grocery stores,
I have
post
that
office,
too.
or OHV, restricted areas and other, and one of the questions I had was the use of similar areas, and so I think that's a little too general, we probably need to further define what you mean by that.
Yeah, I put in there too, and in general shall not be utilized as a primary source of transportation.
Sounds great.
Another thing that maybe just to check in with law enforcement, like in Chaffey counties, they have the restriction and prohibited acts, and they have, they shall, you know, OHVs shall be equipped with mufflers, spark plugs, all these things, which I think probably are all encompassed in some of those CRS or licensing registration pieces, so if that is in fact the case, then we can keep it simple as we have it.
And some of the references in here about, you know, turn signals or lights and that type of thing, I added in to make sure they're functional and operational, because just having them on the unit doesn't help if they're not functional and operational.
Can we add, compliance with any emergency management orders? Like fire bans in particular? Sure. If it's super dry, you can't operate an ATV because of the risk of starting a forest fire. I'm wondering if that can be.
Are you
in there
each
somewhere?
sending over, edits or
No-
suggestions?
notes?
Yes,
Sure. I have a bunch of, I have comments in here
Okay.
that I can.
Yeah, if you wanna
Okay.
send over your red lines.
Yeah.
And then we'll merge them together, that's kind of what I was thinking over the next week, is that we would take in, and then I would fine tune it with Chris, in preparation for your first meeting in February, so that sounds great.
And do you have so back on paragraph 8 about, or the sort of point A to point B, you have the language that I sent around, or I don't know if people had thoughts on that, because I think the point A to point B, and specifically saying that like no county road can be a legitimate recreational destination seems a bit.
I think that's the old one, that's the old one.
that's the
Yeah,
old
so I was gonna say that-
That's the old one.
Okay,
And that section 8,
Because that's the other thing I noticed is.
With section 8's
revision, it would have it as also a designated recreation, designated, or designated recreation destination type thing, so it's designated, it's not.
yeah, I mean, but I guess what I've been envisioning is like whether it's in the road use map or wherever, that there are some sections of, you know, primitive county road that are outside of where, you know, residential access, and, you know, they're just distinctly different than like County Road 4, or I mean, you know, like the road out down to Turquoise Lake or Mountain View Drive, or, you know, a few other paved county roads. I mean, they are currently recreation destinations for people.
Right, right. I think taking out the
Yeah.
road can't be the destination, and it is in the newest draft that we
Okay.
that
Sorry, not sure.
took that out. So, well, you got 3 of them, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
So it is taken out, and I think that when we, we're gonna work with Public Works to look at
Yeah.
how do we categorize, and so then I think our final draft after the moratorium work will be so specific about, do road categories and classifications really, are they a great tool to demonstrate what is a, reasonable recreation path, and what is the best direct path, and we're really hopeful that this will be a great tool for the county and for transparency, so that everyone is on the same page. Oh, the one thing that I just remembered, Bryce, what I was wanting to add in there that I had forgotten is I will also, unless you are doing it somewhere else, Chris, is this ordinance the appropriate place to put that Public Works is the authority who establishes road closures and opening of roads and closing of roads? That was the piece that was missing, we had talked about, and I know that is something that we haven't been able to locate that exists, but we'd like that.
There's the BOCC can designate the road is right, essentially as the authority for that.
Okay.
The authority lies within the BOCC's discretion, and they can delegate it to the road manager.
Okay.
Or supervisor, road supervisor.
Great.
The team use.
And would it be prudent to include that in here? So? I just remembered that one from the 6 o'clock this morning. So. Okay. The ones that you picked back and look at.
So Jeff, to your point, like specific roadways, I think again, like, and this is, I think we all are falling in and out of that trap of like blurring the like ordinance and then the special use permitting and like the designation and or what, through the special use permitting process, if there are things that become abundantly clear of like, I'll use mosquito paths again as an example of a roadway that Public Works cannot, like we cannot afford to have continued damage on, and that's close to all OHV users. Like I think that they have the authority, we have the authority to do that per season, or
Yeah.
or add that, and I think we could be better at putting signs up, talk to Public Works about putting those signs up at those berms and this and that, and like as an educational, and also posting an ordinance so it's a little bit easier for law enforcement to enforce.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking of that, but like also imagining like if there's some lower sections of mosquito paths that aren't, if a road is just like trashed beyond like any safe access, but if it's a good dirt bike route and it's never gonna be we're never gonna pave that to drive over the Breckenridge, like, or Fairplay, sorry. And put a sign up saying this is an unmaintained OHV route. I think this is like hypothetical, if it's just so trashed that we can't safely let people on it, then that should be set on the road use map for private users. And it would certainly be off limits to the SUP, designation for commercial.
Right.
But I think there are other segments of road where, you're not conflicting with residential access or other business access. They're currently used as private, local residents use them for recreational riding, motorized or non-motorized, and we could designate it as such, and I don't think it makes sense to like write it as the point A to point B, and I know, so you can ride up there and like touch your foot on Forest Service land, and you're legal, like, let's just admit that it's a rec asset, and it's so different than a paved county road closer into town. And then I actually think where it gets trickier is sort of some of the intermediate roads, like 36, the boulevard. I don't know, if you drive from your home off of 36 responsibly to get to the east side, it doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world to me. So I think there's sort of like the middle roads where, as long as you're doing that, like, whatever the phrase was, reasonably direct to an appropriate private, or, as a private individual, if you use County Road 36 to get to the east side and you drive safely, I don't want to make someone trailer, where we have no trailer parking.
Yeah.
To
On the
get
east side.
to get to a higher part of the east side. That doesn't seem like it's really helping anyone.
Yeah, and I don't, it depends on whether you're talking about commercial or that public use.
Not
and I
commercial
think
at all. I think commercial is like
idea
a whole
was like
different thing.
trailer,
But
not
like,
park, but not block up the very small areas you have.
Yeah. No, but even if people who live in town had to trailer, but you don't live at the base of the east side. I mean, if you have to trailer a quarter mile, where I think it would actually be safer, easier for everyone if you could ride responsibly on some parts of the roadway that aren't Mountain View Drive, or by Safeway. But I think most responsible riders have kind of figured out a pretty safe way to get to town to go ride without having a trailer. And I'd hate to shut that down or have to have law enforcement turn a blind eye to the letter of the law. If you're doing donuts on the community field parking lot, that's not cool.
Yeah.
If you're doing 70 down the boulevard, that's not cool. But if you're driving the speed limit and slowing down when someone's walking their dog.
Right, and a lot of those road etiquette and safe requirements are built in to the existing ordinance too. Really good. But I think Bryce and I are really excited about we're both very visual people, and just the idea of the county having a road use guide that just really, and I think that's what I think I continue to hear from the board too, that that'll be a really powerful tool for you if we can coordinate that and bring that forward for consideration.
And I think to add to that, through the CUP and SUP process, the point B, quote unquote, for commercial will be defined through that process.
Yes, I was envisioning by the time a commercial operation gets through the SUP and CUP, they have very specific routes on a map.
Based around.
That would have possibly a frequency and number of units, but very specific route.
Yeah, for sure.
Not just you have an SUP to ride on county roads.
Right. Okay.
Well, and I think that, once we've gone through the conditional use permit process and the SUP process, there's gonna also be some predictability for private individual users, public, public users, like public, I stop saying private, public users, some predictability, because one of the stakeholders that we spoke to in different user groups, and it'd just be great to have that predictability of where can we, where's the public use and where's the commercial use, and so we can avoid each other too. So some predictability in that, we heard would be really supportive of both user groups, and so I think that'll be really helpful when that's that's something and that's a known feature. One thing that if I would love, Bryce has looked into, we really started I started asking questions about GPS tracking and asked Bryce to look into that, because I'm okay, well, my first thought was if commercial users were warranted with assuming the responsibility for finding the vendor and how are we gonna manage GPS tracking? And so I think Bryce has looked into that. I think he's got some really great ideas. You wanna kind of share about how we were thinking about managing that requirement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, you know, not a new concept, and so there are off-the-shelf OHV specific GPS trackers that are available on the market. And I would think that one of the best ideas or ways to go about that would be for the county or CPD to actually be the provider of those GPS trackers. That way all commercial firms obtain them from us, they have the same, but we actually have the control of the data and the enforcement and everything like that.
So we saw those at CCI.
Yeah, so there's some ideas at CCI. I know Jeff brought up the Barn Owl, which is like a remote trail cam with access to the cell phone network, and so, you know, that's a possible enforcement mechanism where you set that up where the commercial tour shouldn't be, and then you catch them if they do go there and you have the
Enforcement tool.
But these GPS trackers that I'm looking at, you know, some of them, they're self-powered, so they're not connected to the vehicle themselves, but they have a battery on board that can last up to 40 years. I don't believe that in our cold conditions, but you know, we have some length in the battery life, which is good. They're magnetic, and so they can be stuck onto any vehicle where that would work, and they're meant for heavy duty off-road use, so they're meant, even though the magnet is there, it's a strong enough one to hold on through the wear and tear. And then one of the most exciting parts is that a lot of these GPS tracker apps offer geofencing.
Yeah.
And so that would go hand in hand with the SUP process where they have a designated route that they're allowed to be on. And then because the county actually provided the GPS unit, these devices would be able to automatically alert the county if a vehicle left the geofenced area.
Yeah.
And so it's a low cost, low burden, kind of easy to maintain solution.
Okay.
But yeah, there are other alternatives like the Barn Owl, and I know they're counties.
I think the Barn Owl idea may be really interesting for law enforcement purposes.
Yeah.
And for that, you know, that piece about enforcement that we really work on and dig in with them for just the concerns that we heard through the town hall meeting. And, you know, I think that coupled with providing some outlet education and programming for youth, you know, might really go a long way to addressing some of those public concerns that we heard. And so I think we're really excited about those potential outcomes as well.
I had also one of the provisions mentions like county issued stickers, and I was still just wondering what purpose that serves. If they have the GPS for commercial, I don't know, it just seems like another process like that a lot of people aren't gonna follow, and it's just like another thing to enforce. I don't see what outcome county issued stickers is achieving.
Do you want to take that one right there?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a way for public users to contribute to the maintenance of the trails and the roads. It is an enforcement, there's an enforcement
Like a
piece
local
to it.
registration.
Yeah, you know, like I look at the model that Wyoming has, where it's really not a burdensome process to get it. You just walk into the gas station, you pay your $16.
Okay.
Some of that portion goes towards grooming, some of that goes directly to search and rescue. Just the services and resources that you might be taking from the county, you're paying back a little bit into that. And so it is a good faith measure, and it's not 100%, it's not gonna be able to catch everyone, and people are maybe gonna be able to be right, but it would go a long way towards allowing the public users to pay back into the system.
Yeah, I just want to explore like what's the sort of lowest administrative cost approach, if it's like or is there like an easier way of doing like voluntary contributions at trailheads or something, you know, just through your smartphone with a QR code rather than something that sort of feels like your government's monitoring you.
Yeah, I mean,
Just a question to ask, like what's the lowest administrative costs to get the most money for trail maintenance?
yeah, and I see it as almost similar to the trash bag program we have.
Yeah.
Where it could be available at a lot of different, not just coming into the CBD desk, but you can get it at Ace Hardware or places that snowmobilers or commercial users or non-commercial users are likely to go before they go out.
In beneficial license, it's Saturdays, is
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
there's just places, and I think that we've always got to be cognizant of with, right, supportive, sustainable, income sources. Just because it's always, as you well know, we don't have to tell you that.
Is that in the ordinance to adopt sooner than later? Should we?
So we have, I think we still need time to develop that. That'd
Yeah.
be in the moratorium period.
Yeah, okay,
We wouldn't be looking to launch that until next year.
okay. Yeah, and just some other things, like the time of year or snow depth and like public works discretion of like when
Opening and closing.
motorized wheeled vehicles are allowed or not allowed, and yeah, opening and closing. And like that etiquette language of like being pretty explicit that like you are like subordinate to, I mean, it's been reported back by Public Works that they've been like on a road doing maintenance or like checking on something, and they've been like honked at by a line of ATV, and you're like, okay, well, you gotta find a different way. So I guess like takeaway, meeting with the Forest Service on that process specifically and getting some information on how to address the SUP that's coming after the ordinance consideration. Meeting with law enforcement and public works maybe for the ordinance consideration to be sure that there's specific language that they are comfortable with, and that we can start talking about any signage up on roadway access points that could be helpful, that may or may not get up in the next 3 weeks. I mean, realistically, probably not, even just in ordering a sign, but that we can kind of get in the works sooner than later. Our well, I guess maybe just the 2 specific direction for the OHV or the ordinance consideration. And then lots more things to figure out for the SUP. But that you're anticipating that being ready, I thought you said for February, but.
Right, so January 17th, so this next week, we'd like to, take in your input
On the ordinance.
on the ordinance and the special use permit.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at that, you can find anything there that you would like us to consider. So in the next week, we would get you, what we've heard today, we would go in and make some modifications, have it back out to you, and Chris on the 17th for a final look. In that week, we will check in with Public Works and law enforcement for them to review it, see if there's anything additional that, or anything that needs clarity in preparation for bringing it forth for adoption in your first meeting in February, and going with the compliance pathway. So we would ready everything so that it would become an effective tool. Or all of them will become effective tools and put in place by February. Well, thank you. Is that helpful? Very,
you guys?
incredibly helpful.
And if you could just link us to Rebecca, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and looking, because I think that we can also, that work doesn't have to be inclusive to the moratorium, because if we can provide some guidance in the special use permit, we could do that, we could apply that immediately. So we wouldn't have to just rely on that for those outcomes. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
And we'll send you our
Red
lines and comments.
I captured most of what we had discussed today in,
Okay, that
Comments.
ordinance, great,
Yep.
thank you so much.
and then I've got some extra comments on the bottom that I will pass on to you too, that were outside of the ordinance in regards to like the CUP process.
Sure, okay,
So I'll send that over to you,
perfect, thank
or
you so
all,
much.
and Chris. Sounds good? All right. Anything else?
Lots of other things, but we'll stick to this today. We'll wait till February for all our others.
All right, and when are we gonna do that work session? Is that priority setting?
You know, the
Or
priority setting,
revisiting?
but I think is I can.
Hiding in the gallery.
We're rethinking February 13th, and the only reason I was thinking about maybe doing a different date is that's the Leadville 7 sketch plan major subdivision hearing for the joint plan commission and board. So that might be a pretty heavy lift that day.
Okay.
So I was wondering if maybe we could, was it the 13th that you make the meeting?
You want to do the 14th?
Sure.
Or we could move, you can choose any day.
14th is fine, I just thought maybe just separating those, because the 13th is gonna be a little bit of a heavy lifting. It'd be a very long day for the board and for staff. That'll come that into,
The Leadville 7.
yeah, the Leadville 7 in the evening.
Okay, sounds good. Can we give them another 24 hours of breathing room and look at Wednesday? The
Or no,
15th?
Yeah,
I think we're completely open, right, Bryce? I think we're,
On the
I don't think
15th?
we have anything that would preclude us from changing that.
2 p.m.?
15th?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
okay. It's in this.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Good? Okay. All right, so, I think we feel pretty comfortable, so we will, go ahead and adjourn for today at 3:19 PM. And then this will be noticed for our subsequent meetings, January 17th, and then again in February.
Yes.
So those will be our next two follow-ups. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.